All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Design, Build, Hunt podcast, which is presented by Whitetail Partners. I've got a good crew on the line today. I've got Greg from Ohio, Brennan from New York, and Dylan from Kansas. Guys, how's it going so far?
It's going good.
Going well, Josh. How about you?
Good.
Pretty good. You guys have been doing some hunting, so we're going to do another episode here in just a little bit talking about season updates, but I want to talk about a big topic. It's right around the corner for some of us. When this launches, it'll be gun season eve for a lot of people. This is going to go out on a Friday morning instead of a Thursday morning because I'm going to try to be in a tree stand tomorrow. So this will not be launching tonight. I'm going to be going to bed right after I get off of here. But gun season right around the corner, guys. I'm curious. You know, a lot of you guys are obviously big bow hunters at this point. You spend a lot of your time with archery tackle in hand. I'm curious how you guys think about gun season. And Brennan, I want to start with you. I feel like I know the least about New York and New York's gun season, but there's a lot of tradition around New York and New York's gun season as well. We don't typically lump it in with states like PA or Michigan or Wisconsin, but New York's got quite a tradition around its gun season.
Yes, it absolutely does. That's even how I was brought into the sport was going to a family camp during that opening weekend, and it was like Christmas morning. I mean, it was the best feeling in the world. All the way to the point where we'd be able to take a day off from school, the following Monday. So it's definitely a tradition up here. There's multiple camps all around the state, and it is just like you hear in Michigan. I mean, it is an orange army out there. There is so many people that take part in the sport, and it's awfully busy in the woods.
Yeah, for sure. What does that look like as far as your harvest totals for the year? You know, I think about states like Wisconsin and Michigan, huge gun season harvests, on that opening weekend. What does that look like for you guys in New York?
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to remember those numbers right off the top of my head. I did look those up at one point in time, and it is a tremendous amount of the overall harvest rate for the season is going to take place during that gun season. And I mean, obviously, you have a weapon in your hand where you can reach out a long ways, and it's also a lot more people in the woods. So obviously, those harvest rates are going to go up tremendously, and they do.
Yeah, for sure. Greg, you grew up gun hunting in the great state of Michigan, in a spot that's been pretty special to me that I've visited a few times as a kid. I grew up hearing stories from my dad, who grew up in Michigan, about hunting up in the UP. So tell me about your growing up years and what that gun hunting tradition meant to you.
Yeah, it was really special. My dad and his dad, they purchased a cabin up in Michigan's Upper Peninsula that was turned into a deer camp, and that they bought back in the 90s, the late 90s. So it's been in the family for a very long time. And really, my early core memories were going up to deer camp, or I guess before that, waiting for my dad to get home to tell me the stories of deer camp. And then once I was old enough to finally start going and hunting with him, then that's when it transferred into that, and then finally getting to do that myself. So it's very special. Definitely not quite the same type of hunting as it was when they first bought it. Very low deer density. Odds of success, especially if you're going after bigger deer, is pretty low, but it's just the tradition aspect and just getting to be a part of the third generation now of guys from my family that are going up to this camp. It's just a very special thing. And now that I'm getting ready to have a family of my own, like, the idea of being able to pass that along further is something I'm very excited about.
Right. And do you still get to get away and take part of that gun hunt every year?
Yeah, right at this phase of life, it's not as much. Like when I was a teenager and didn't have much going on, I was able to go up for pretty much the whole 2 weeks of Michigan's gun season. Right now at this phase, I'm getting up there for between like 3 to 5 days, like a long weekend, usually right around that opener, and try to get back up with the family for the holidays. So yeah, I still get to get up there, just not quite as much.
Right. How do your standards change? I'm curious. I know down here in the South, there's a thing that people talk about down here, and it's oh, well, that would be a good bow buck, and so the standards are much, much lower for people during archery season because our gun seasons come in, here in Georgia, it comes in October. In Alabama, gun season comes in November. We hunt with rifles all the way through the rut. It's a very different thing. The standards tend to go up. But I know in Michigan and Wisconsin, a lot of folks, their standards kind of dip just a little bit because it's not about the size of the buck that you harvest. It's about the people that you're sharing camp with. It's about the experience. It's about the tradition. So, what does that look like for you as you head from, the big buck state of Ohio up to the UP of Michigan, where you might see a Forky in 5 days, and that might be all?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different. I am blessed to be able to chase around some really big deer down in southern Ohio. So my perspective changes as far as the rack size go of deer that I'm willing to pull that trigger on. I do put a lot of younger bucks in the scope in the UP and tempt myself, but I generally still try to chase the older bucks. And I might only have success every few years, but it's just really still the thrill of the chase on the older deer. And even if he only scores 120 inches, being able to wrap your hands around an old, mature UP buck and just think about everything that deer went through in his life, that's a pretty special moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up looking at a couple of mounts that my dad had in what we called the man cave, right? And you know, racks that to me at the time looked big, but in reality they were 115, 120-inch deer. But then he'd show me the pictures of them and these deer hanging from the rafters of a garage with their hind end dragging the ground. We're talking 300-pound live weight animals. So giant, body sizes, but rack sizes are, a little bit different, may leave a little bit to be desired. But Dylan, I'm curious about your experience there in Kansas. You guys have that early muzzleloader season, which to me is pretty interesting. I see a lot of guys go out and have success, but you have a later gun season as well. So I'm curious what gun season looked like for you growing up, and kind of if you still partake, and if it carries the same weight of tradition as like a Wisconsin or a PA or a Michigan.
Yeah, Josh, I don't want to speak for all. Around here, there's quite a few camps that are kind of more that traditional camp, and that's what I grew up just getting at least interested in hunting. I only rifle hunted for a few years, but I still have to go back up just because I love the camaraderie of all that, and so I'll join some of the family groups, and some of the best hunting stories ever are told there. I just great memories there. Things have changed a little bit, I will say, since they've introduced crossbow more statewide. I think more, and we've got basically you can choose the any season tag, which allows you to hunt during a legal season, whichever weapon's open. So there's quite a few, I think, that have converted and pick up the crossbow, may not hunt real hard with it, but then they, if unsuccessful, will hunt that rifle season. But yeah, I really enjoy doing that. It used to be kind of a fairly common thing to go do a lot of pushes and drives, and so that was always fun for me, even as a bow hunter, I'd volunteer to do some of that, even though the tactics aren't the same, and everybody's got kind of an equal chance there, so I think that's a lot of fun for them. But yeah, I think with the advancement of trail cameras and that kind of thing, and more people in different pockets of cover, you don't have quite as many kind of surprise deer. But that's what I remember, that time frame when I was into it a little bit, man. It was like there was just that nostalgia. Just you never knew what could come out of certain places, just because didn't have the history and a lot of the intelligence that we've got now. So that kind of takes from it a little bit. But I think, yeah, overall, that's just a fun atmosphere to go. Just kind of catch up with those. And we've got the same thing, a week and a half season here. So we've got guys that'll take that full season and a little bit more. But yeah, we kind of do the same on the archery side. It's just our season a little bit longer. So we kind of deplete all of our get out of jail free cards and kind of can't really get in there with those guys as much as we want to. But yeah, it's fun to go up and join those camps.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious. It seems like the camaraderie, and for a lot of people, it's really about the place. Like it's literally about the camp or the cabin and the people that are there that gather there. It may be once a year that you're seeing a lot of these people. They may not be folks that are showing up to holiday events and stuff, but these are buddies that you get to reunite with once a year. I want to do a quick like round table, maybe starting with Greg, then we'll go to Brennan, then back to Dylan. What are some of those maybe favorite traditions, favorite memories, or something like that that goes along that is kind of one and the same to you with gun season or deer camp?
Yeah, I would. I think you hit a really good point with like the being able to see the people that you don't get to see really otherwise. I've been blessed to like expand my reach in the hunting community, and I've got to meet a lot of really cool guys along the way, and have even came to find that there are other people that I was hunting right down the road from in the Upper Peninsula that we knew people from a friend of a friend, and those people have now kind of intertwine their way into our not our hunting camp directly, but in that area. And it's people that I literally won't talk to on the phone, I won't text, but every year I look up to those few days that I'm up in the Upper Peninsula and I get to chat with them. I get to chat with the family and just hear like all of those old hunting stories. Either the buck that was tagged, or even better, the buck that always gets away that gets bigger and bigger every year. I think my dad's the best at telling the stories about the buck that gets bigger and bigger every year, the one that got away. So I always look forward to the story from my old man about that when we're sitting around the table after the hunt at camp.
I love it. I love it. Brennan, what about you? Maybe a favorite memory or one of those things that for you is just hand in hand with gun season?
Yeah, Greg hit it right on the head right there. There is people, even in my own family, cousins that I would not know if it wasn't for family camp. It's just brought us all together. And even outside of deer season now, because of the camp's location, we all visit up there for picnics and everything like that. So that deer camp has really brought us all together. Not only that, I would say that that Friday night going up there before opening day is a tradition like no other. Honestly, I like it more than Christmas as a kid. There's that feeling is great. You get up there, you gather, you have great food, you have some drinks, probably stay up a little bit too late, play some poker, play some pitch, try to get up the next morning. So that time of year for me, I kind of relax. I lay back, probably don't take my strategies as serious as I should, but it's more about that tradition and hanging out with the family.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Dylan, what about you, man?
Yeah, a couple camps come to mind, but I got to tell one that's just more of a kind of my dad's generation. They had a guy that retired and kind of picked up just doing some processing on the side, and so after every night's hunt, it would be basically you wouldn't just go home, you'd stop in there, and so you never knew who was going to show up and walk in, and of course they had got into the drinks a little bit at times, not while hunting, but so I was always younger, and got to kind of play in all the fun tricks and stuff with some of those that might have had one too many possibly. But yeah, the guy that ran it, it was always kind of the local liquor store always had Cabin Still was kind of the drink of choice there, which is a pretty cheap whiskey. But we'd always talk about bringing a bottle of Stab and Kill up there when you're going in to do any processing, and it was just always a good time. That group always kind of got together, and it helped everybody kind of work their deer up together and see what somebody brought in. So yeah, just kind of a fun memory.
Yeah, yeah. I remember growing up, and again, hearing stories about the UP deer camps kind of thing. And it seems like all the best stories started with we stayed up late playing cards and doing a little bit of extracurricular drinking the night before, and so made me get out of bed. And so I went out and I'm trudging through the snow, and then X, Y, and Z happened. Like that's kind of like where the best stories, always seem to start. But and maybe and maybe I don't know what the statute of limitations on this would be, but from my family, there's some stories of a little bit of questionable outlawing on some things. There's one where way. I mean, this is back in the '70s probably, and the story of my of a family member. We'll just leave it at that. A story of a family member who took a boat across a lake there in Michigan. They ended up shooting a moose in Michigan, which I don't know how illegal that was back then, but apparently it wasn't good. And then a storm blows up. They're trying to get this moose back across the lake. They almost sink the boat, in this little lake or whatever. So, you know, hilarious, gun season shenanigans, I guess we could call it. But I'm curious though, gun season's coming up, and obviously it packs something that bow season doesn't seem to these days, or bow hunting especially. Bow hunting has almost become a very solo kind of pursuit for a lot of us. I mean, guys like us, obviously, we've got a group chat where we're all texting back and forth. Dylan, you shot a good buck the other day. You posted it on there. We're all hyped for you, that kind of thing. But not a lot of like camps where we're all, descending on the same 200-acre parcel for the weekend and, just letting the deer have it like you would maybe during gun season. I'm curious how your strategies might change a little bit. Brendan, you said maybe you don't take them as seriously as you should, or maybe as you would during an archery hunt kind of thing. But how do your strategies change? And we can start with any of you, whoever wants to jump in. How does your strategy change for gun season?
Yeah, I can go. So the reason I guess my strategies would change during that time of year, and maybe why I throw those out the window, is because we're hunting about 220 acres. We used to have about 8 to 9 guys that hunted on that property. Now we're down to about 5. And that's the only time of year that we all actually have our own spots. This is blah, blah, blah stand. This is so and so stand. So really, you're not hunting the wind as much as I particularly would want to. But again, I kind of let all regards down or all my guards down and try to enjoy and relax and enjoy the family. But for those of you out there that maybe do have those options to use these strategies, I would say, look at what time of year you're in, meaning what phase of the rut, what phase are the deer in, and make sure you take that into account. Most people, when they have a gun in their hand, they want to get in an area where they can see a mile and a half. And in most cases, like for us, our gun season takes place in the peak of the rut. So if you're out there in a wide open field, most likely your chances, at least at a mature deer, are going to diminish tremendously. So look at what phase of the rut you're in. Again, for us, the peak rut, I'm focusing on those bedding areas, those doe bedding areas, a place that maybe I can get the best of both worlds as far as visibility goes. I'm picturing an old pasture, a goldenrod patch, any brush shot like that. You can really use that to your advantage, allow yourself to see a long ways, but also allow that security cover that the deer have in those areas.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, that for us down here in the South, man, power lines and gas line right of ways, those are the place to hunt. I'm on a lease with a lot of other guys. And if you're not there really, really early in the morning, you're not going to get a spot on the gas line or the power line. Like, it's just not happening. They're out there and, looking over the clear cuts and the big wide open spaces. I tend to be on the other side. I kind of just carry a gun to the places where I would be bow hunting anyway. And it's like, well, today I get to shoot 45 yards, which is as far as I can see, rather than, 25 where I might limit myself with a bow. But Greg, how about you?
I like to just stay really mobile when I get the chance to hunt with a gun, whether it be up in the Upper Peninsula or down here in Ohio, and just really try to stay active and follow the deer around. It seems like that's a strategy that I kind of find a lot of other people doing as well. We get a lot of deer drives, pushes, whatever you'd like to call them, and I try to piggyback off of that and use it to my advantage, and try to identify the areas of where these deer are getting pushed to, what are the places that people are overlooking, things like that, and really just kind of narrowing in on those and kind of checking one off. If it seems like there's deer living in that area right now, then I'll kind of hang out around there longer. If not, I'll just kind of move along to the next one. So still sticking to those same types of thicker cover, higher stem count areas, just not being afraid to go from one to the next, knowing that while I'm walking between the two, there's a greater likelihood that now that I have this extended range that I might get something that gets pushed or gets bumped out, whatever that may be, and kind of find that opportunity.
Right. So, you say you're staying pretty mobile. So you're on your feet, moving throughout the day, trying to find the deer during the day. You're not camping out in one spot, just waiting for deer to cross.
Yeah, I'll usually like bring my saddle on my back, just in case. Like if, because I like to go into areas like a new clear cut or any kind of new logging cut where there's a lot of extra food on the ground, especially in like the big wood setting, just because there's going to generally be more deer there. And if I get really confident that if I can hang up in a tree for a few hours and see something, then I'm definitely going to do that. But yeah, especially in the UP, like where we get snow, I tell you, especially with my limited time that I have up there now, my favorite thing to do is just drive around in the early morning, find a fresh track, and park the truck and just start going after it and see if I can't track them down during the day. That's got to be my favorite tactic to use during gun season in a fresh snow, and something that I feel like is just you can learn a lot about deer by just following them around the woods for a day.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I grew up in deep South Alabama, like just a few miles from the Gulf Coast. And I grew up reading books by the Benoits and
Hmm.
about their,
Yeah,
tracking experience and, wanting to do this. And I'm like, this will never happen for me. Like
yeah.
this is never going to be the same. be the thing for me in coastal Alabama. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I
But
definitely am nowhere near that level of expertise as those guys are, but I've read all those same books and followed along with like the Big Woods Bucks guys and stuff like that, and just really enjoy that aspect of hunting because it is so different from what I'm used to and like kind of that stalk and set up strategy during the bow season.
right, right. Dylan, what about you? How does your strategy shift and change, when camaraderie maybe takes precedence over getting a mature buck on the ground?
Yeah, well, for us, we're kind of a one buck state. So if I've still got a tag in hand, I'm still bow hunting. And if not though, like this year, you mentioned the good fortune I had the other day. I'll be there helping my son if he hasn't filled his tag, but he also buys the archery only. We do have that option. So there's a kind of the any season, which most people do pick that, and I don't fault that at all. It's just kind of the preference. So one thing I will say with that though, that I think could be taken a little bit further. And everybody's got their own goals and what they want to get out of a season. So I understand that. And a lot of those that go for the camaraderie and for that camp atmosphere, may not have, the goal to shoot a big, large buck or whatever. But there's been times where I've, talked about different strategies and hunting the wind and just kind of playing it a little bit more like you are trying to bow hunt, as far as utilizing some of that with the travel and that some people just have that one stand they want to go to for their own enjoyment, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And there's sometimes they'll look at me like I'm talking with two heads or something because I can just tell that's not really what they want to get out of it. They're just hunting regardless. They're hunting out of it. This is where I'm going, and that's what we're doing. And I will say, if there's one time a year that a new face can show up, and I've seen it pretty regular, it's during that rifle season and following. And I think a lot of that is just because there's places that are kind of those sanctuaries, and then all of a sudden there's somebody shows up. They didn't do any prep work, and they show up, and that kind of puts them on the move. So whether it's a new face or not, you at least get them moving, and that's kind of the fun mystique about that rifle season, I think, and that's part of why I kind of switched over. I like seeing them in their natural environment. It just seems like they're a little more on the scare mode, and not quite seeing and that's, yeah, hopefully when I put this stuff together on my recent success, I mean, just the vocalizations and all that kind of stuff, you kind of miss out on that, but it can still happen. I think hunting around those doe bedding groups, you've got those yearlings coming in, and I've seen it, and I think it's fairly common, even though our rifle seasons are later and outside the main rut, there's still those young does are coming in, and it can be really good for them as well. So that keeps it fun for them. I'm glad they get to see that, because we take a lot of heat as bow hunters get in the heart of the rut, but it's also why our structure is the way it is, and we've got the quality that we've got still, in my opinion.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you brought up a good point there with, in gun season, it really is one of those things where anything could happen, especially states where you've got a shorter gun season. Everybody hits the woods at the same time. That forced movement that you're going to encounter is not something that you can reproduce. It's really not something you can even do much planning for. Like, yeah, you may know a great escape route off the neighbor's property when they start pushing through or whatever, but man, it's really, really hard to pinpoint exactly how those deer are going to adjust to that pressure. But then also there's that, there's something about that nostalgia piece. Like, I've got spots in Alabama, that we've hunted for years that I will continue to hunt. And have I ever killed a big buck in a specific stand? No, but I'm used to sitting in that stand during gun season, and I'll probably do it again because I'll think about last year's hunt there and the time that I brought my kid there, and the doe we shot there and how much fun that was. And so yeah, it's a lot more. There's just a lot more to it. And the trophies that we bring home might not be the deer itself; it might just be those memories and that time spent with family and friends. So, well, guys, with all of that, I guess out there on the table, what advice would you give somebody? We're here right before a couple of the major gun seasons kick off. What's one piece of advice you'd give somebody? Hey, gun season comes in this weekend. Here's what, I would suggest that you do. Greg, we'll start with you.
Oh, let's see. I guess I'm gonna go with don't be afraid to start a new tradition for that gun season.
Oh,
We've talked a lot about all these things that we've done with our family for years and years. Well, at one time there was a year one of those traditions. So if you have a group of buddies that you want to get in and start doing some kind of hunting camp, then you can always start that new tradition this year.
yeah, man, that's so good. I was talking to a guy who's an outdoor writer, and he wrote a piece kind of, um, I guess, mourning the loss of the old school deer camps, how there's just fewer and fewer of those old school deer camps, going on these days. And it was like, yeah, but all those started somewhere, that at some point those didn't exist and then they came into existence. So like the answer may not be, hey, let's cling on to the deer camps that we have. Like it could be like, let's start new ones. Like let's pick up on some new traditions. Let's grab a group of buddies. Let's, grab a couple of family members that maybe we don't spend a lot of time with and go get out in the woods and have a good time together. Brendan, what's one piece of advice you'd give folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I've said a lot here. I would just relax, enjoy the process, enjoy the family. Us being, hardcore bow hunters, land managers, habitat consultants, we're trying to strive to produce the highest quality deer in the neighborhood. And during gun season, in my earlier years of doing this, I used to get all worked up, stressed out, shed a tear every time I heard the gunshot go off on the neighbor's property because, there goes one of my target bucks for next year. All I would say is, don't focus on those things you can't control. Enjoy the moment, enjoy the family and friends, and you're gonna have a lot more success because of that.
Yeah, man, that's such a good point. Such a good point, especially as folks who are diehard bow hunters. Like you can let that eat you up. Seeing other people shooting deer that maybe we wouldn't have, or maybe the deer that we've spent all bow season chasing and weren't able to get. So that's tough. Well, Dylan, what about you?
Yeah, those are both great. Like Greg's, I think you honestly, I'd like to replicate that. Just starting something new like that and doing that for even archery season to me, it just seems like a lot of fun. We've talked about it, kicked it around for a lot of years, but we're not guaranteed tomorrow. That's the biggest thing. And like Brennan said about relaxing and having fun, that's a big part of what I believe. And I truly feel like I'm not that good of a hunter. However, I've had my successes. I think a lot of that is just because of stubbornness and a little bit of embracing the suck is kind of what we call it in art, or basically in elk hunting. That's kind of what you find. You get beat down, and I'll tell you, this year was no different for me. And I think there's always those times where you're going to have different things, whether it's the weather or different things going wrong, or maybe you jump your target buck and you think it's over and that kind of thing, or you hear about a neighbor shooting it. I mean, just you don't know what can fill the gaps, and keeping that positive mindset is kind of my big thing, and just being mentally tough throughout. Make it fun, obviously, so don't sit out there and not enjoy it and grinding it out, but if you can kind of get that mental toughness with it, I think you'll have a lot more fun throughout it, and just keeping that positive mindset.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, I'm just going to echo, a piece of what all you guys have said. Get out there and have a good time. At the same time, stay safe. There's a lot more hunters in the woods. A lot of guys who maybe aren't as experienced. Maybe they haven't been hunting all year. Maybe that trigger finger is a little bit itchy. Wear your orange. If you're getting in a tree stand, wear your harness. Accidents happen every single year. Obviously, gun season's now much safer than they used to be. You look at the injury reports from back in the day, and it looks like we used to have the Wild West going on out there in gun season. It's relatively safe these days, but still, safety comes first. But get out there, have a good time, make some memories. And hey, if you're getting out and going to be enjoying gun season, good luck to you.